associate. I've been with them for 7 years and delivering these webinars as well for the Supplier Development Programme. And we're going to go a medium pace tonight because it is evening and I know that you all want to get your dinner, but at the same time I don't want to miss anything. So what I will do is do a presentation and be happy to take questions at the end. The way I prefer to do these demonstrations at different experience that seems to work quite well is that I'm going to go through this PowerPoint, which is a series of screenshots of the process from scratch of registering for Public Contract Scotland and the portal, right through to submitting the tender. And so it follows the process exactly of what you will do. And after that, I will go online and do the whole thing again live. Now, there are two benefits to doing it this way. The first is that hopefully by the time I come to do the online demonstration, what I'm doing live will seem familiar to you because you've just seen it in a PowerPoint presentation. But the other benefit is that when you get the recording of this session, if it's something quickly you want to look at, it's quite easy to go back to a PowerPoint slide and look at the particular slide than it is to necessarily, go through the presentation to find the right part. Now, let me just move on to the next slide. We are going to be looking at the whole process of tendering for this. And I know that some of you on this webinar will be experienced in tendering for contracts and are looking just for information on this particular one. But I guess that there will also be people here who are coming to this public sector tendering for the first time, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. So I am going to take it from basics, and we discovered this morning actually quite a large cohort this morning, but about half the people on the webinar had never tendered before, so it was brand new to them. So what I'm going to do is take it from the very basic right to scratch. And so if you are experienced in public sector tendering, please excuse me because I'm going to spend a few minutes telling you things that you already know, but we don't want to leave anybody behind. So what we're going to be looking at today is how to register on the portal Public Contract Scotland, which is referred to always as PCS. We're going to show you how to find the contract notice for this contract. It was being managed on another portal, Public Contract Scotland-Tender, PCST, and I'll explain that as we get to that point. I'll show you how to express your interest in the contract, how to get access to the contract documents, how to respond to it, and we'll be looking very importantly at the question and answer procedure because there are very strict rules around engaging with the buyer and what you can and what you can't do if you've got a question to ask. Once I've done this on the PowerPoint, which will take about 10-15 minutes, I'll go on to the online demonstration and we'll do it again in real time. And then at the end, we can look at some of the documentation, some of the questions, and we can look at how to answer them well. Now, what I can't do is tell you what to say, because you're the experts in this field, not me, but we could certainly cover how you could say things, how you should address the questions, and how you what constitutes a good answer. And then we can take questions. And it would be better if I took the questions probably at the end of the whole thing, because you may come up with a question about something that I'm going to answer. I'm keeping my online demonstration open at the end anyway, so we can go back and have a look at anything that you weren't sure about. The first thing to say is that there are two portals that are used for public contracts, for public sector tendering. Public Contract Scotland, PCS, Public Contract Scotland Tender, PCST. I won't bore you with the reason as to why there are two. It's historical. Over time, I think next year they are looking at actually merging the two into one portal. But at the moment, there are two, and you just need to close that. PCS is the one where all contract notices are advertised, regardless of whether the actual response is managed in PCS or whether it's managed in the other portal. This is where all the contract notices are advertised. It's a good place for you to register, to register as a supplier and get the contract information, because PCS contains more information about the contract than you'll get when you move across to the other portal. So in order to get started, if you've not already registered with PCS, you need to do so. It's a very simple process. You register as a supplier, and it will take you approximately 2 minutes, I think, to get yourself registered. It's simply really a matter of putting in your email address, creating a password, putting in some very basic company information, and that's enough to get you started. And that then means that you can log in using your username and password, your email address. And that will bring you through to this area here, the supplier area. This is the landing page once you've logged in. It brings you through to this area here. Number of tabs across the top. The only thing that you will be interested in for this contract is the suppliers area, latest notices. And when you hit this button here, click the latest notices, it actually takes you through to this tab up here, search notices. It's the same function, so you can either click on latest notices or you can click on search notices, and it will bring you through to the same screen. You don't need to bother about any of the other tabs at all for this. So when you go to latest notices, you'll see that it then lists everything that is in the system. Current opportunities, prior information notices, award notices, etc. So there are 12,748, or there were yesterday when I took this screenshot. And the way to filter down to what you're looking for is to simply put in the keywords or keywords of Renfrewshire Childcare. Then this notice type here, when we go to do this live, it's a drop-down box with current notices, current opportunities, future opportunities, contract award notices. So you want to select current opportunities, and then you want to simply search. And when you do that, it will filter down to the contract that we're looking for, which is the flexible framework for early learning and childcare places, August 2025. And you'll see there's a reference number here, August of 537937. If you had previously known that number, you could have put it in the reference box here and it would have taken straight across. So there are a number of ways that you can get to this contract notice. When you click on the hyperlink, it takes us through to this message, which you can quite clearly see is in bold, saying the buyer is using the other portal PCS tender to carry out this procurement process. So why would you bother coming into this one in the first place? Well, as I said, it was because there's a lot of information contained in here that you would want to read first before you decide whether or not you want to actually go for the tender. I'll explain about what the framework's like in a minute or two. So here is it saying, please visit the PCS website. This is a hyperlink, which I'll come back to later on. But before we do that, I want to have a look at the notice itself in briefly. This is the summary text that tells you, the abstract tells you everything that you would want to know at a high level about this contract, about the type of contract that it is and how long it lasts. We'll see that when we go online live. It's easier to look at it there. But if we go to the full notice text, which gives us more information about the contract, then it tells us clearly who the client is and the scope of the project. But if we scroll down, then tells us that the estimated value of this contract, that it is an estimate, is £125 million. So that's the value of the contract, the framework, across both lots over the full period. And the tender is split into two lots. Lot 1 is for registered child daycare providers, and lot 2 is for registered childminders. The description here of the procurement, it tells you again a bit more about what they're looking for. It tells you that the duration is 84 months, and we'll see in a minute it's actually 4 years to begin with 3 optional extensions taking up to 7 years. And we scroll down further, we can then see there's more information about the conditions for participation in this contract. I'm not going to go through all this at the moment. You can read it for yourself. Tells you what you need to do in order to be able to participate in the tender, and it gives you some conditions relating to the contract. So you want to read all that and make sure that you're quite happy with it before you decide that you want to bid. But this is the summary information that's taken from that contract notice. It's a flexible framework agreement. What that means is that if you feel that you're not ready to bid for this at the moment because you're not in the right place for it, for any reason whatsoever, we'll come back to it later on and join at a later stage. So that's the difference between a flexible framework agreement and a normal framework agreement. This will be opened up for you to join later on. But as we saw, the total estimated value is 125 million, 4-year period, 3 possible annual extensions, broken into 2 lots, and that you must meet all the selection and technical criteria which are clearly explained in the contract notice and that you see in the tender process as we go through. So if you don't meet these selecting technical criteria, you may want to bid in the future. But what you might want to do in any event is actually express your interest in this contract anyway, because when you do, and you'll see this in a few minutes, when you express your interest in the contract, the framework, you'll be given access to all the documentation and to the portal to see how to answer it. So even if you think you don't want to do it now, it will give you access to all the information that you're going to have to submit at a later stage, and you could learn from that, prepare for the next time that you want to bid for this. We will have a look at that in more detail. The deadline for this, incidentally, is the 9th of October. It's at 12 o'clock, and that's an absolute deadline. You will not get your tender accepted 1 second after that. So I would recommend doing the work on this and these tenders well in advance. The very last time that you'd want to be thinking about submitting is the day before, because if you have IT problems, it will be your problem. The buyer won't give you any leeway for the fact that your internet went down when you tried to submit. And for a tender of this size, because I believe there's a lot of work to be done in this one, you probably want to prepare it several days in advance. And if it was me that was doing it, I would be trying to prepare it maybe three days in advance, leaving it overnight, going back to it the next day, and just checking over before I submitted it to make sure that there are no last minute changes that I want to make. So give yourself plenty of time. There's a lot of work involved in this. Let me go back to, this is just hung for a second. It does this occasionally, so I just need to wait. Here we go. Back to the contract notice that we looked at a minute ago. As you see, if you visit the PCS tender website, when we do that, we have to enter this project code 29688 under the tab ITTs open to all suppliers. And then we'll filter down to project code and we'll be able to find this tender. So this is, we would now go across to the PCST site and use this project code 29688. So we're leaving this PCS site. We're not coming back to it again. This is us leaving it. This then brings us across, that hyperlink brings us across to PCST, which is the portal being used to submit this tender. And again, you can register as a supplier if you're not already registered. It's a simple process, doesn't take long. But if you, the difference here is that you don't need to use your email address as a username. You can link these two sites, PCS and PCST, but there is no real advantage of doing so in this case, so I'm not going to talk about that at any great length, or any length at all, because you would need to create a specific type of username. So these two sites are separate, so you need to register separately, and you can choose a username which isn't your email address if you want to do that. When you log in, you will be brought to this landing page. Now, we're going to be working in ITT's, invitations to tender. But before I do that, if I were you, I would be going to my user profile and going to manage my profile and setting up your company information and a lot more information about the questions you're going to be asked repeatedly about your business, about your fitness to trade, etc. These questions in Manage My Profile are saved, which means that they can be used over and over again for future bids. You don't have to actually populate your user profile in order to bid, but what will happen then is when you do go in and open up this invitation to tender, you'll have all these questions to answer anyway. So it actually makes sense to fill the Manage My Profile, and as far as you can, because it's going to transfer across to the ITT, and you'll be able to use them again in the future many times. So go into invitations to tender. This brings us through to the tab that we spoke about earlier on. Excuse me just a second, I haven't a dry throat. ITTs open to all suppliers. Now, this filter drop-down box here will give you the opportunity to choose project code. So select project code from the filter. The operator contains or equals to. I prefer to put in contains simply because when you're copying or you're typing in or copying and you inadvertently put in a space at the front, it won't recognise it, whereas contains will. It doesn't really make any difference. So we're looking for project code 29688, and then we search. it brings us through to the three documents, the three bits that you might want to be working on. Now, excuse me, on here at the bottom, the flexible framework, master ITT, master invitation to tender, it's compulsory. So it doesn't matter if you're bidding for lot 1 or lot 2 or for both of them, you must complete the flexible framework master ITT first. And that is what was called a qualification document. It's a pass-fail. You could pass it because, as we'll see when we go live, some of the questions are really trying to weed out companies that are not fit for trade. So if you're fit for trade, you'll be all right. But you must complete the ITT, and then you must come back in here again and select lot 1 and lot 2 separately. So I think that the ITT does not help complete the lot. You've got to do these separately. But let's click into this first of all and go to this screen that it brings you through. This is why I always recommend looking at PCS first, because there's more information about the contract contained in the other portal than there is here. If you had the project code and came straight here, it wouldn't tell you an awful lot about the project. So it makes sense to have got to it this way. Now, when you express interest in the contract here, it takes you through to, it moves across to my ITTs. Actually, there are 2 buttons you need to hit there. You express interest, and then it just gives you a little bit more information, and then you hit that button again, and it's intend to respond. So you hit it twice. Right. And it brings you through to this list here of my ITTs. And here you can see that this master ITT has been brought into this tab. That allows me then to work on it. Go to my ITTs tab. This is it here. When we click on it, we go into it. I beg your pardon, this is the point at which you intend to respond. So you express your interest, you click on it, and then you intend to respond. And it's not until you actually intend to respond that you get access to the actual pages themselves where you can go in and put in your answers. So what you have to do is express your interest, read it, and intend to respond. What that then does is it creates this mandatory qualification response with 42, as this is a screenshot, so I'd already answered 1 or 2 questions. It gives you a count of the number of mandatory responses you still have to make. You can see there are 42 here. Now, don't be too put off by that, because if you had actually populated your user profile when you set yourself up, a lot of these questions would already been answered. But even if you hadn't done that, a lot of the questions are very simple and straightforward. Some of them are yes/no answers, confirmations, and some of them are just details about your company. So it's not dreadful, don't worry about it. And when you then go to back to the ITT list of ITTs open to all suppliers, you can see then you've got lot 1 and lot 2 still to answer. So we're looking at lot 1, for example, and the questions in both these lots are very, very similar. So lot 1 has 68 mandatory responses in the technical section. There's a technical section and a commercial section. These are the hyperlinks, and you answer each one of them separately. So you would go into the technical response and answer 68 questions that are there for you to answer. And again, although there is a lot to do in this tender, don't be concerned about the fact there are 68. A lot of them are very simple responses. For lot 2, you can see that there are 61 responses, so that lot 2 questions are not identical to lot 1. They're very similar indeed. Commercial response is very simple and straightforward. There are only 4 questions. And because they have given you the pricing for the job, you don't have to fill in a spreadsheet or anything like that. You simply have to confirm if you're happy to accept the prices, the rates that they're giving you. You'll get access to the buyer, to the documents, and here is up at buyer attachments. When you click on that, it brings you through to a list of all the documents that you need to download. Now you can see there are quite a number of them. There are 74 legislation and guidance documents, and these are not to be returned. They're there for your benefit, for you to check back to if you're not sure about something. But you will probably be aware of most of these anyway. So these are just there for guidance and reference so that you can actually make your tender properly. There are 15 documents that you do need to submit, that you need to complete and submit and upload. And there are 9 invitation to tender documents. Now, these give you the information about what they're looking for, the specification and that sort of thing. So you've got your specification documents, your documents for submission, and your advisory documents, your guidance documents. And you can mass download these to your laptop, your desktop, wherever it is you're working on this system. I'll see it live in a minute or two, but one more thing to mention is this is where you've got your message function up here. Now, it's very important you do not make direct contact with the buyer during this live process. The tender is live. You're not allowed to, because that trying to contact the buyer directly would be seen as potentially trying to influence the buying process. Now, you wouldn't be doing that, I'm sure. What you probably find is the buyer just wouldn't respond to you. So the way that you do communicate with the buyer during a live tender is through the messaging function. You can see here there's a list of received messages, sent messages, and you can create messages of your own over here. So if you had a question at all about this tender, it could be anything at all. It could be the specification, you could be wanting some further information about visits or something like that, excuse me. It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got a question, you would create a question and you would submit it online through this portal. Identify yourself, because the questions are anonymised and even the buyer doesn't know who's asked them. But what happens then when the buyer gets them? They answer them within 24 hours or 48 hours. 24 is more likely, but within 48 certainly. And they will post the answer back up here on the Q&A site on the Receive Messages tab for everybody to see. So everybody will see the question that you asked, and you'll see the question that everybody else asked, but nobody will know who asked it. But please do ask questions if you're unsure about something, because the buyers are just human. They make mistakes, and it's very common for something in the tender documents not to make sense or to be plain wrong. And if you highlight that to the buyer, they will correct it and they'll come back and tell you what the answer, what the response is. They will also, every time a question is answered, they will send an email out to everybody who's registered to bid and say, a question has been answered in this tender. Please log in and take a look at it. So you can either do that directly through the link they give you, or you can come back in here and view the received messages. So I'm now going to go my system, the live demonstration. I have to come for a second. There we go. Right. Okay, at that stage, is everybody quite happy with what I've covered? Because I'm going to do this live now. If there are any questions, I could take them now. Take some now.
There's nothing come in so far. So if anyone's got any questions, if you could just use the chat function that is down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, so Shan is asking, if you submit an error, can you go back in and amend before the closing date?
Yes, you can. I'll show you that when we're going through, but the answer to that is yes. I'll make a point of covering that.
That's perfect, thank you.
You can actually submit as many times as you like before the closing date. The only submission that will count is the one that's in the system when the deadline passes. Okay, I'll just carry on. So here we are in, this is obscuring my view. The reason I've got such a dry throat is I did one of these earlier on today and I had another one after that too. So here we are in Public Contracts Scotland PCS. So I'm going to log in as myself. I've got some dummy information in here that I use for demonstrations. And this brings us through to the supplier area that I mentioned earlier on. Now you can either go to latest notices, or you can go to search notices, and it will bring you through to exactly the same screen. So I'm going to just hit latest notices. Now, you can see it's working away up here. It's not too bad today. I was about to say sometimes the system can be a bit slow. It depends how many people are working on it at any time. So you can sometimes find that you're waiting for a few seconds, or quite a few seconds, before it uploads. So here we are in the list of notices, and there are now 12,740 in there. So the way to get through to this, as I mentioned earlier on, is to type in the filter keywords, and I just chose Renfrewshire Childcare, and it worked. Okay. The notice type is current opportunity. Yeah. It will take a few seconds. There we go. So it now brings us through to the contract that we're looking for, the flexible framework. And as I said earlier on, this OG reference here, you could put it into the reference number here if you remember it. Anyway, we got there. So we now go into the notice itself. And this is the information telling us that the buyer is using Public Contracts Scotland tender PCST to manage the project. But before we do that, we will have a quick look at the notice details. So there's an abstract here telling you all the high-level information about the contract. And I've already covered that in terms of the duration and so on, so I'm not going to go through that again. But you can read that at your leisure and decide whether or not it's for you. It's a flexible framework. So if it's not for you now, you can go back to this at a later stage and apply later, so you're not locking yourself out for any length of time at all. It's Renfrewshire Council, as we know, the service. It tells you here that the value is 125 million. It is divided into lots. Lot 1 is the registered child daycare providers. This is the description of what they're looking for these providers. The duration is 84 months in total. That's with the extension. Lot 2 is for the registered childminder. The information about what they're looking for and how we're going to go about the procurement. Again, it's 84 months. We don't know how the breakdown of 125 million goes across the two lots. It's not explained. Or if it is explained, I haven't found it and I've been looking at it for a while. So there are some conditions for participation in terms of allowing yourself, permitting visits to be carried out and things like that. There are conditions relating to the contract. I'm not going to go through them all. You can read them at your leisure. But I would imagine that, well, the one thing I would mention is that readers that don't currently hold evaluations of good or better for Care Inspectorate quality indicators will not be eligible just now, but they can reapply later on. So if I were you, I'd be reading through this whole thing, satisfying myself that I'm happy with this, and then bidding for it. The quality price split is 100% quality. And the reason for that, for those of you who are familiar with public sector tendering, they quite often they weight contracts like 80% quality, 20% price, or 50% quality, 50% price. This is all scored on your quality responses because you have to accept the commercial terms that they're offering you. There's no option to do anything else. So there's no price bidding, no price wording on here. They're also telling you about your employer's liability and public liability that you need. You don't have to have these now. If you've got £3 million worth of employer's liability and you want to bid for this contract, as we'll see when we go into the bid, you can just say that you commit to get it, and that's good enough. So I'm not going to spend any more time on this. Some of you will already have gone through all this. And if you've read all this and you feel I still want to go for it, then you go to the PCSP site. I'm going to log in as myself again. I've got two logins here, and I'll explain why in a minute. So I'm going to log in, first of all, again, as myself with some dummy information. And this is here where you can go to manage my profile. I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's self-explanatory, but there are questions here that you can answer about your company, about the bidder, the person that's actually putting the bid in, the manager, the owner of the company, whoever it happens to be, information about any information about the company, information about any representatives of the bidder. If you're using a third party to get the bid for you, you would want to put information in there. There's some statements regarding criminal convictions, payment of taxes, etc., and blacklisting. Now, I haven't filled all of these in, but I have filled in some so that you can see what happens when you go across to complete the tender. Now, if you did fill all these in, you would never have to do it again unless something changed, and they would carry through to every tender that you ever did. We'll go back to the home screen again, and let's assume that you've either decided to fill in that profile information or you've decided to skip it. We'll go straight to ITT's invitations to tender. So within the tab, ITT's open to all suppliers. We're still looking for a contract at this stage. We haven't actually done anything. We're going to look for project code. Contains, if I made the correct note of it, it's 296882. That's worked good. Occasionally, I will warn you, occasionally it doesn't work, and it's because you maybe got a space in, but state contains tends to take care of all these issues. So I used to like contains, as I said earlier on. So here we have the three parts of the project that we would need to complete if we're going for all of it, or two if you're only going for one of the lots. This one here is the flexible framework for early learning and childcare places master invitation to tender. So, clicking onto that, it brings us into this short description of the contract. And here is where I would express my interest. Now, I'm not going to do it in this login. And the reason is that I did this yesterday so that I could get access to all the documents. I did it under a separate login. So what I'm going to ask you to do just now is just please take my word for it that if you express interest, this button will then turn into intend to respond. And when you intend to respond, it will take it across to the My ITPs tab, which is what we're looking at. So I'll just say the site later just now. I would then do the same for lot 1 or for lot 2 or for both if I wanted to go for both. And I would express my interest and intend to respond. So if we can assume that I have done that, I'm now going to log in using my other login. Okay, the ITTs. And now I go across to the My ITTs tab. And there are the 3 that I had expressed interest in and said that I intended to respond. So let me go to this one first, the flexible framework at Master ITT. This is the qualification document, effectively. So you'll see there are 31 mandatory responses. That's because I've already completed some of the questions. I've already completed some of the responses. I think there are about 48 or something like that, if you haven't done anything in your profile. We'll have a look at that in a second. But the first thing to do would be to look at the buyer attachments. Now, there is only one buyer attachment as it happens for this particular part of the process, because this is the Master ITT, the qualification document. And that attachment is a document where you need to fill in 2 references from 2 previous happy clients that you've used in the past. So this technical experience document you would download. You can either download it itself or do a mass download, but pointless when there's only one document. Download that. You would need to complete that and upload it to the portal where it tells you to do that, and we'll come back to that. So let me go to my response. So all we've done so far is log in, downloaded the buyer attachment, saved into my laptop, and incidentally, I have already gone through the lots and downloading these documents, as you can see. Okay, that's it. The qualification response is partially answered, as you can see. I also did some of this morning on the live demo I did this morning, and I'll kind of come out of that. I don't need my Outlook. So they ask you to confirm that you've read and understood the supplier guide and when. Now, all these questions are going to be answered by a mixture of a drop-down box, yes or no, or uploading documents that they will give you to complete and upload again. These are in the buyer attachments, and there may be sometimes some free text spaces for you to complete, but it's obvious when you come to each field exactly what it is they're looking for. So first of all, they're looking for the name of your company, your VAT number if it's applicable, and if your company's house number if you're a limited company. They are asking for your DUNS number. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with DUNS, Dun and Bradstreet, you may not even know that you've got DUNS number. If you don't have one, what you need to do is visit the Dun and Bradstreet site, Dun and Bradstreet, and register for free. And that you will be able to see there what your DUNS number is. Now, that is a number that people use for credit scoring purposes. And there is a credit scoring question in this tender where they expect you to reach a certain score. We'll come to that later on. And they do that by checking your DUNS status. So if you don't have a DUNS number, go to the Dun and Bradstreet site, register for free and find out what it is. Okay. They then are asking for name and address details. So this is all very simple. I'm not going to bother putting anything in here. They ask you for the size of your organisation. Are you micro, small, medium? Are you a supported business? Do you employ 30% or more of people who come from a disadvantaged background or have a disability? If you're not, then that's fine. The answer is no. This question here is a question that goes back to when we were part of Europe, because we all used to use this portal and it hasn't changed since Brexit. So the idea, the question of if you're a UK business, select not applicable is the obvious answer there, because you presumably are a UK business, so that question is not applicable. They do ask you if you're bidding in the joint, in a consortium with somebody else, with another company. If you're not, fine. If you are, then they will ask you for the information on that company, and you will have to download a single procurement attachment, which is in the documents, which is the paper version of what we're looking at now. So they're going to have to complete a paper version or an online version, but uploaded as an Excel spreadsheet as opposed to on the portal. And for each of the bidders that you are in joint consortium with. If you're not, skip that. Then there's some information about the person who's completing this, the manager or the owner of the company who is submitting this tender. Again, nothing contentious or difficult in here at all. Then they ask you if you rely on any other company or any other body in order to be able to conduct your business. Unlikely that you would. But if there is any reason that you're connected with another organisation somehow and you can't trade without them, then you have to say yes, and it will bring up another list of questions for you to answer again about them. So the buyer wants to know who they're dealing with effectively. This is an important question. Does the bidder intend to subcontract any share of the contract to third parties? This does not mean are you going to be using subcontractors in the delivery. Because you may have associates, you may have freelancers, you may have people who come in on contracts with you. That is not what they mean. They mean if you win this contract, will you take the role of a management contractor and allocate the contract to somebody else to deliver, and you just take a management fee for it effectively? And that is not what they're looking for here. So unless you are actually intending to win the contract and pass it on to somebody else, then the answer to this question is no, even if you are using some contractors for some parts of the contract. If you retain responsibility for delivery of the contract, the answer is no. I'll do this next section quite quickly because it is self-evident, I suppose, that the answer to almost all of these questions should be no. They ask you to declare if you've ever been guilty of conspiracy. You'll see this question here as well. It comes up after all these questions we're about to see. If the relevant documentation is available electronically, please state, well, there won't be any, because presumably you've not been guilty of conspiracy. They then ask the same questions about, are you guilty of corruption, terrorism, money laundering, terrorist financing, child labour, human trafficking, drug trafficking, any other offences under EU law. But then there are two questions where they ask you to confirm that you have paid your taxes and that you've paid your national insurance contributions. And I do know of cases in the past where people have thought, oh, these are all, I've seen these questions before, they're all no, and they go through and answer no to these two questions, and they rule themselves out, because if you submit having said no to these, there's no way of going back, you will not be considered. So just be aware of the fact there are a couple of yeses in here. The rest are all no's, presumably, you haven't presumably offence under the blacklist regulations, or broken environmental law, or social law, or labour law. You're not bankrupt, you're not insolvent, you're not in arrangement with creditors, or anything like that. You're not in administration or in liquidation. You're not suspended from trading. You're not guilty of grave professional misconduct. You haven't tried to enter arrangement aimed at distorting the competition, which is why you're not allowed to contact the people directly, incidentally. And you don't have any conflict of interest. He's not going to do the answer to all these really are no, serious misrepresentation, unable to fulfil contracts, etc. Then we'll come down to this section getting near the bottom, where they ask you to say if you're enrolled in the relevant professional registers and trade registers in your country of establishment. This again is a throwback to when we were in Europe, because some European countries have different registers for professions as they do from trades. What we're putting in these boxes here is your company's house number, if you're a limited company, and the trade associations or professional associations that you're affiliated to. And it doesn't matter which box you put them in, as long as you just put them in. As you can see, there are 2,000 characters available in all these boxes. You won't be expected to use anything like that. That's just the maximum limit. So you're putting in very basic information here about the company registration, company's house, and any professional affiliations you've got, and it doesn't matter which box you use. Whenever you see this question, if relevant documentation is available electronically, please state. I just wouldn't bother. I would just leave that blank or put any in, because if they really want to see evidence of these registrations online, they will ask you for it. And what's going to happen anyway is that they are going to go back to the professional registers that you're registered with, and they will check. They'll do that themselves, so you don't need to bother answering any of the questions where it says, if this relevant documentation is available electronically, please state. Just say that it isn't. Leave it blank. So, more questions really, you're answering yes, no. Then we come to the employer's liability and the professional indemnity insurance. And as I said earlier on, from the drop-down list, you can either say you've got the level of insurance that they're asking for, which is explained here, or you can say, no, I haven't, I'll to get it. And the reason for that is they don't expect you to go and to buying insurance for a bid that you haven't yet been awarded, for a tender that haven't been awarded. So it's perfectly acceptable to say, no, I'll get it if I get the job, if I'm awarded a place on the framework. So moving down towards the end, you then have to provide 2 examples in the last 3 years of satisfied customers, and this is one of the documents that we've downloaded here. It is the I beg your pardon, let me take it in here. It's in the Master ITT Technical Experience document. We'll take a closer look at the end. Here is the document that you need to complete and upload into the portal, and you would do it here. So you just drop your file in here and save. I recommend saving as you're going along, because as long as you're working in the portal, it's fine. But the minute you stop, if you leave it for too long, it will time out. So it's a bit of a nuisance if you've actually spent a lot of time uploading documents and you haven't saved your changes. So I recommend doing that virtually every time you upload something. So they're looking for 2 examples of satisfied customers before. And then you put in your name, your date, your place, and you can then save and exit your response. So before I do that, you can validate it if you want to. All that the validate does is it runs through the responses, and it highlights in red anything that you've missed. But if you save and exit the response, you're not coming out of the tender altogether, just this response. Brings you back to the home screen, and you can see that we've still got 30 questions to answer. So you would not be submitting your response until you had got that number down to 0. Now, the question that was asked earlier on was, if you submit your response and you want to go back and change it, you can. You simply go back to the My ITTs list. You can see that it says response submitted, but you just click into it again, and then you can edit your response, and you can do that as often as you like. I don't imagine you have to change this one very often, but there might be some changes you want to make to the lot responses, some more technical information that you want to add. But you can submit the response as often as you like. Nobody sees it. It goes into the system completely confidentially. You're not giving away any confidential information by submitting early. I recommend submitting early. And submit it often as you like. And the only submission that matters is the one in the system that's 12 o'clock on the 8th of October. We'll have a look at the messages when we go into lot 1, actually, because the process is the same for all of us. So having done all that, you would then have submitted your tender, and you would, submitted your master ITT, and you would then go back to the lots that you want to go for. Now, I'm going to look at lot 1 in detail. I've touched on lot 2 at the end. But for those of you that are bidding for lot 2, don't worry, because the process is almost identical. It's just a couple of the questions are different, that's all. So the process for lot 1 and the process for lot 2 is exactly the same, just a change. Let's go into this lot 1. And you can see, instead of having a qualification response, we've now got a technical response and a commercial response. I'll look at the commercial response first, actually, because it's very simple. The commercial response simply consists of you saying, yes, I accept the tender, the price offered to me, which is detailed up here. There's a document, S7, which I have downloaded, we'll see that in a minute, which is the declaration that you have to complete and drop it in here. And then you have to tell them whether you're using an electronic signature or whether you're using a conditional signing and a scan. I don't really know why they want to know that. It doesn't make any difference these days, but they do. So there you go. And then you need to upload the document ATC, evidence of authority to contract, which is simply a statement to say that the person that is submitting this tender is authorised to do so on behalf of the company. So you would save and exit that response after these 4 questions have been satisfied. The mandatory missing fields would hopefully at that time have come down to 0. But the bulk of the work that you're going to be doing on this tender is in the technical response. Before we go in there, let's have a look at the buyer attachments. I think lied among you, you'll remember when we did the PowerPoint, it said there were 74 in there. That's because there was another one added today. I did the screenshots yesterday. So there are 75 legislation and guidance documents for you to refer to. You don't have to submit anything from that. There are 15 documents for submission, and they are here. I've downloaded them already. And there are 11 invitation to tender documents, and these are documents that tell you what they're looking for, specification and all that sort of thing. So nothing to be submitted from that, but all to be read. So sadly, there's a lot of reading to be done if you want to submit a very good tender, I'm afraid. So you would then go to mass download. You know, the file being too long, that's okay, we can do that. You would then download all the files to folder of your choice. Okay, so I've already done all that, so we'll come out of that. So having downloaded all the documents, the most important thing to do is to read the invitation to tender documents, read the instructions, read the specification, and make sure that you're perfectly happy with everything you've got to do. Everything you need to know is in there. So let's go into the technical response now. And I'll go through this at medium pace again, finishing with enough time for you to ask any questions that you've got. So again, there's a combination of drop-down boxes, not so many free text boxes, if I remember correctly in this one, and uploading files. We'll go through them. All actually, so you can see what. So first of all, you've got to confirm that you've read the master, that you've submitted and completed the master ITT document, because you can't get for lot 1 unless you've completed the master one that you looked at a few minutes ago. Then it tells you to confirm that you're aware of the fact that there were 2 training sessions today and you're on the second one. But they ask you to confirm that you did know that that was available to you. Then there are a number of confirmations here. I'm going to do them quickly because simply you have to say yes. If you say no to any of these, then you're not ready to tender at this stage. Confirming that you've read and understood the conditions of contract, etc. So service specification, you're going to have trained staff, So there's a lot of questions here around information for parents, national standards, data control, tender submission. But you've just got to confirm that you are going to adhere to what it is that they want, or that you have systems in place. There are then some declarations that need to be completed, and these, where you see here this exclamation mark, it means that I haven't downloaded it from here. Where you see a paperclip means it has been downloaded from here. But unusually for this tender, all these documents here are contained in the buyer attachments. That's not common. Usually what happens in the buyer attachments is you download all these buyer attachments, and as you work your way down the system, you'll find some additional documents that relate to a specific question, and you have to download them separately. As it happens for this tender, everything that you need to download is contained in the buyer attachments. Okay? Out of good practice anyway, I would click on the no collusion certificate, and I would say that I want to save it to my folder, and it will turn into a paperclip. Okay, so that just lets the buyer know that you've actually done it and read everything. That's all. So what we need to do is complete the equalities questionnaire form that they've given you and drop it in here. Complete the equalities declaration and drop it in here. Then compliance certificate, so on no collusion certificate, non-involvement in serious organised crime, non-involvement in human trafficking. So these are statements that are contained in these documents here. So you simply fill them in and drop them in. You have to say that you're registered with the Care Inspectorate to provide services for this lot, and that you need to put in your Care Inspectorate provider number, and basically work your way down here and answer these questions when they're looking for information about your registrations, etc. Then there's a question to say, do you have an evaluation of good or better from the Care Inspectorate across all assessed indicators? And they are looking for that for this tender. So if you say yes, that's fine. If you say, however, no, I'm a newly registered service, then it brings up some other questions for you to answer around your confirmation of your understanding and the date of registration of the Care Inspectorate and so on. And they'll confirm and accept if you're successful, you'll be entered into a probationary period. So there are some additional questions that open up depending on what you answer here. But let's assume that you are already holding the appropriate evaluations. So if that information on the Care Inspectorate registration isn't publicly available for whatever reason, then you need to attach some evidence here, but it probably is. Okay, this is not a mandatory question because they will be able to go to the Care Inspectorate website and find the information for themselves. But if it wasn't available for some reason, you'd have to upload it here. Then they ask you if you've been subject to improvement notice. And again, if you say no, these questions do not open up. But if you say you've had an improvement notice, then you have to attach a copy of it. If you say you've had a conditions notice, you've got to attach a copy of it, and so on. So the questions that open up depend on what you say here. Then some confirmations again, you need to upload an organisational chart. You must now confirm if the ELC manager, the practitioner holds the relevant level 9 qualifications, so yes. And then you'll see now that there are some questions that come in here that are rated with a percentage rating. Now these will all add up to 100%, and this is the weighting they give to each question. So the titles and qualifications of the management and staff, this answer is worth 5% of your total response, which will be assessed at the end of the day. Now there is no actual pass mark, but the higher you score, the better you will be viewed by the buyer and more likely to get work out of the framework if you're accepted onto it. I'll come back to how to answer these questions in a minute, but you can see that they're looking for titles and qualifications of management staff. So that's a file that you need to, again, there is a file they provide for that. They want you to provide benchmark qualification and SSSC evidence. Continuous professional learning is in place. You is the confirmation. So work your way through these, and where they ask you to drop a file, they will have provided it for you, and you complete it and bring it and drop it here. A lot more confirmations yet about implementing guidance and proper practices. Another document framework to support children's learning to be uploaded, to be completed and uploaded. That's worth 11%. Confirming that you comply with local procedures. So you can get the point here. I'm not going to go through every question. You understand these questions better than I do, but it's either a case of confirming that you do something, or putting a document and dropping it back in here in terms of your learning environment, etc., outdoor learning settings and so on. So you work your way through all the questions, and there are quite a number of them, as you can see. So this is why I suggest that you give yourself plenty of time to respond to this. You have to confirm that you comply with the Equalities Act. They ask you to provide summary evidence about how you go about that. So you want to upload your policy procedures, work confirmations, liaising with agencies and services. You need to upload a business continuity plan. So what happens if your office isn't put up in flames, or your nursery goes up in flames, you know? You have to complete the Fair Work questionnaire, Fair Work First questionnaire that they have given you. It's one of the downloaded documents, and so on. So you work your way through all these questions, uploading policies where they ask them. Somebody said this morning, you know, my health and safety policy, I've got a number of documents that relate to health and safety. What you would do is zip them together and put the zip file in here, because you can only upload one file at a time against each response. So just zip the documents together and put them in here. Risk assessments, health and safety questionnaires provided, cyber security questionnaires provided, so download it, upload it, and then you'll see here, this is what I was mentioning earlier on about Dun and Bradstreet. So tenderer will be expected to have a Dun and Bradstreet failure score of 20 or above. If you're not sure what that means, ask your accountant. Your accountant will be able to take care of it for you very easily. And you may also be able to get the information from Dun and Bradstreet themselves. So there is one of the documents you download is a guidance document to tell you all about it. But essentially, you need to confirm that you have a failure score of 20 or more. So the higher your score, the better it is, and that is a likelihood of your business suffering catastrophe and going out of business. So the higher your score, the stronger your company is. But again, your accountant will be able to help you with that. Then you upload your insurance documents and confirm if you have an environmental policy. If you don't have one, I would imagine you would have one, but if you don't have one, they're easily obtainable from the internet. It's not hard to get hold of. The Supplier Development Programme, I think, may even have some. I'm not sure about that. And so having done all that and answered all these questions, validate your response, find out what's missing, save and exit, and then you go back to the screen again. And when this commercial response and the technical response have both come to zero, at that point, you can submit your response. Now, if you've submitted your Lot 1 response or your Lot 2 response, and you've submitted your Master ITT, that's it. But as I say, you can go back in and amend either of them up to the deadline. Now, I wanted to have a quick look at, before we look at how to answer some of the questions well, having a look at the message function. So in here, we've got received messages, and you can see that even there was some come in yesterday. 11 questions so far. For example, I'll just look at one of them. Clarification relating to signing documents. So somebody has asked the question regarding the forms to be signed, does it have to be a wet signature? And the answer is tenderers may choose either traditional signing and declaration or electronic signing. They did actually mention that in the tender documents. Somebody's obviously missed that, and it doesn't matter. They've asked the question and it's been answered. So that question, when it was answered, you would have received an email to say that that question had been answered, and you would be able to come in here and look and see what the answer was, because it might be a question that you want to ask. If you want to ask a question, simply choose a classification for it. Let's say it's a qualification envelope, you're not sure about something in there, give it the subject, type your message, and send the message off. Off it goes, securely, anonymously, and within 48 hours, hopefully 28, you'll get the response, and it will be in this list here, and everybody will be able to see it. So that is how to use the system. And before I'll go to the point where we take some questions, I just wanted to some of the questions and how to respond to them properly. Because there are some pitfalls in some public sector tendering if you're not careful. So this question here, the title and qualifications of management staff, which is worth 5% of the total score, they're telling you here what they're looking for. So I know this sounds a bit obvious, but you cannot assume that because they've asked for this, that they assume that your answer covers it all. So if it was me, what I would be doing is I would be in my response document, I would be saying titles and qualifications, and then I would be listing them all. Practitioner, support staff, modern apprentices, staff details, compliance. I'd be listing, so I'd make sure that my answer specifically addressed everything, every single point that they have raised here in this question. And I've been reading the question again, word for word, and saying, have I covered that in my answer? Now, I know that something sounded a bit obvious, but that's what they're looking for. And also, it's not sufficient for you, although it might sound that it would be, not sufficient to assume that because something is in the service specification that they recognise that you will deliver it. So it's a bit, when you're doing these responses, it's a bit like explaining what you do to somebody that doesn't know anything at all about the business, explaining it to a complete novice. So it's understandable. We think, well, it says in the specification I've got to deliver in a certain way, so I won't mention that I do because I've got to. But they actually want you to repeat that. So you have to make sure that your answer covers everything that's in the question and that it covers the relevant points in the specification, and I would refer back to them. Now, it's good practice as well when you're answering all these questions not to refer to questions elsewhere. Unusually, again, in this contract, they are allowing you to cross-reference, but it's not good practice. If you need to repeat something because it's relevant in 2 questions, repeat it. Repeat every question as if it was the only question in the tender. And if you have to repeat something further on and a question further on down, do it, just repeat it again. It's the best practice. It means make sure that you're not missing anything and that you're not letting the buyer think that you don't understand the question properly. So treat every question as if it was the only question in the tender. What I want to do quickly is go and have a look at some of these questions. The only document that's downloaded in the Master ITT is the technical experience. And you'll see here that they're looking for examples from the last 3 years, and that your completed response should be no more than 2 pages of A4. And they're actually giving you 2 pages of A4 here, so you can't expand beyond that. If you start to put in a whole lot of information in here that takes your answer down to page 3, they won't meet page 3. Okay, so it's very important when you're answering these questions that you take note of the maximum number of pages that they will allow you to use in your response. Sometimes it's not pages, sometimes it's words. And we'll have a look at, I'll have a look at lot 2 in a minute. But if we have a look at lot 1 and go to the Fair Work First question, for example, that was one of the documents that we downloaded. It has to be completed and uploaded again. Then when it eventually comes up, there, you'll see that wasn't this one, sorry, I beg your pardon, wasn't this one, it was this one here, criteria 2 development. Right, you'll see in this one, it's not A4 pages, it's maximum number of words. So the maximum number of words for the response to this question here is 300. If you write 400 and the most important sentence happens to be in the last 100, it won't get read. And so you will be scoring lower than you would expect to, because the important information that you contained was beyond the 300 word limit. So it's extremely important that you're aware of these. That's all I want to say about these questions. Just want to finish up now by looking at lot 2, just to let you see, to give out fairness to everyone who's going for lot 2, that it's the same. You can see there are slightly fewer questions, but the only real difference, the first huge batch of questions are all identical to what we've just seen. It's only when we get down to some of the technical experience about qualifications and level 7 benchmarking and things like that, some of the questions change to be relevant to childminding as opposed to the daycare. But apart from that, as I hope you can see quickly because I'm rushing through it, that the questions are pretty much identical. So the process is exactly what we looked at a few minutes ago. So I'm going to come out of this just now. This won't stay live for very long. It tends to log out, but I can log back in again if necessary. But I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody wants at this stage. I'm done as far as the presentation is concerned.
Okay, I've not got anything coming in yet, Stuart, but if, as Stuart said, if you've got any questions on what you've been shown up to this point, please pop them into the chat. Now is your opportunity to get anything answered around how you process on Public Contract Scotland. I was just having a wee look in the background there, Stuart, just while we were talking, and sorry if I missed it. The deadline date for submitting questions?
Yeah, something like just about to do that. This morning we were asked that. So if you go to the invitation to tender document, and you'll see IT invitation to tender here for lot 1, and it's the same for lot 2, incidentally. This is one of the documents you want to be reading right at the outset, and we scroll down. That will give you all the deadlines. Here we go. So the ITT was published on the 28th of August, so it's been open for a while. The last day for posting questions is the 2nd of October. That's 1 week before the deadline. So after any questions asked after that time will not be answered. The deadline is the 12 noon on the 9th of October. And then from immediately after that, right through to the 5th of December, they'll be carrying out their evaluation and checks. I'll come back to the question in a second. Then they may want to carry out some tender assessment visits, and they'll happen week commencing the 8th of December. Then it goes to the board for approval. There's a standstill period where unsuccessful bidders can raise complaints if they feel they've been unfairly treated. And then the award of places will take place in March 2026. So these are the deadlines.
Yeah, so absolutely take a note of them in your diary, everyone. Most important deadlines that you'll be submitting to. So we're being asked, when I search for the product code for registering interest, it says no ITTs available.
As I mentioned, sometimes there's a blip in the system with the best will in the world. So if you are in the My ITTs tab, if you're logged in and you go to ITTs Open Call Suppliers, make sure you're not in the My ITTs tab by mistake. Go to ITTs Open Call Suppliers and you search for project code 29688. It should come up occasionally. It doesn't right away. You have to do it 2 or 3. I've seen it happen 2 or 3 times. In fact, it happened to me this morning. Your alternative way of finding that then is by I'll just log in here. Right. So if you can't find it, it's possible that I don't know who's asking this question. It's possible that you had registered interest before and it's already been moved across to My ITTs, because once it's moved across, it doesn't appear in the ITTs open to all suppliers. Okay, so you should be able to enter the project code contains 29688. I've already done this, as you know, but you could also search by the buyer, the buyer name, Renfrewshire Council, and that will bring you up a list of the open tenders for Renfrewshire Council. You could type in the project title. There are a number of different ways you can get to the tender, and you can also do it by sorting them, by date. So if I went to the time limit for expressing interest and scrolled down, I would be able to find it'll be found in there. So if you can't find it via the project code for whatever reason, there are a number of different ways you can search for it, like looking for buyer, looking for the title, looking for the date that it's published. It's there, so there's something wrong in the search function.
So we can pick that up offline, Danielle, if you're still having an issue getting that up. So Catherine is saying she's concerned about the DUNS. As a childminder, she's never heard of this and also doesn't know whether she would have an account. So that's the DUNS number.
Right. When you don't have a DUNS, if you go to Dun & Bradstreet site, you'll find out if you've got one or not. Not everybody has one. If you don't have one, one of the questions in the list that you're responding to gives you the opportunity to upload your accounts instead, and you don't need to have an accountant for that. You can do that yourself. So if you do have a DUNS number, they will want to know it, and they will do a DUNS. They want to know what your DUNS score is. They can run a check on that. If you don't have a DUNS number because you're very small or newly registered, then you don't have one. Don't have one. And you might remember that question said DUNS number if applicable. So you might not have one, and in that case, what you'll need to do is upload your accounts or your management accounts if you don't have set of audited accounts. And if you don't have any of that information at all at this stage, then it might be that you want to consider bidding for this further on down the line. when you're properly, when you're able to answer all these questions. But if you don't have a number, as long as you've got audited accounts, or you've got management accounts in place of audited accounts, you've not been in business long enough, you can still go ahead and submit your tender.